to the From Chaos to Clarity, Unleash Your Business Potential podcast live Q&A. It's kind of like the after party. Welcome to the after party. I'm your host, Sonia Jones of GFP Financial, Mr. Miyagi of Money. And I have the pleasure and the honor of having fellow entrepreneur, diva pioneer, Black history in the making, Miss Chasity Monroe, the founder and CEO of Pink Noir. So, Chastity, welcome, love.
Thank you. I am honored to be here with the Miss. What would you say, the Mr. Miyagi of and it is. So yes, I am so excited to be here with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, if you guys watched the podcast episode with Ron Brooks and Ron Brooks is the president of River City Capital, one of the in community development financial institutions in Memphis, Tennessee. And CDFIs are so important,
Yep.
especially for entrepreneurs, because they target what we consider the underserved and the unbankable, right? And so we love River City Capital for what they do and the funding that they provide for entrepreneurs. And so I asked Ron, like, hey, I want to, bring on some entrepreneurs that actually receive the funding so we can talk about the actual process. And so he recommended Chastity and a couple of others. So I said, I know Chastity. I'm gonna go ahead and hit her in the DMs, hey, big head.
All right.
And she gladly accepted. So thank you again, Chastity. So we're gonna get started. I'm gonna
All
read this wonderful bio. I had to print out because I can't
right.
in 40 club, right? So y'all check this out, this wonderful bio. So Chasity Monroe is the founder of Pink Noir Beauty Supply and Cosmetics, the only Black woman on some beauty supply store in Memphis, Tennessee. Get into it. The
Okay.
brand has expanded to include an 8 product hair care line, a raw Indian extensions brand, and spa services. So if y'all have not followed her on Instagram, follow her on Instagram because she has like all the pictures and stuff on there. It's so amazing. So beyond beauty, Chastity is a real estate investor with a portfolio spanning through New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee, right? So we building wealth over here as well. She holds degrees from FAMU, Florida A&M. Proud of love. Like I said, you check her stories out. I just like, she just be sharing it all. I love it. And Columbia University. Her entrepreneurial success and leadership have earned her multiple accolades, including FAMU's 40 Under 40, CGI Entertainment's Power 30, and Mayor Lee Harris's Shining Star for Entrepreneurship Award. So Chastity continues to innovate in the beauty and business industries, building a legacy of excellence, ownership, and community impact. So, y'all, that's what we got on our podcast episode today.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that. So before we get into the questions about the funding, so Chastity, just tell us a little bit about why you started Pink Noir.
Yes. So it is a long story, but the short of it is that I really, wanted to meet what I felt like was an unmet need in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, growing up, I never saw Black owned beauty supply stores, right? And they're pillars in our communities. And a lot of people went natural years ago, and I was one of them. And I would be one of the ones that would like go to Whole Foods and like try to concoct my own things, and then be on the blogs
Mm-hmm.
and just wanting to consume all of this information. And when I
Right.
got to the beauty supply stores, I always felt like it was very transactional. People were looking over me. And knowing that Black women, Black men, the Black community spends so much in this space, I felt like we needed to do better. Like somebody needs to do better. And who better
Right.
than me than to get that done? And so, I am a native Memphian, but I lived in New York for several years. Was afforded the opportunity to come back to
Mm-hmm.
Memphis during the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Cool.
And the last straw for me was just, going to a beauty supply store. At the time, we all were working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, like, I'm kind of back home, but I don't really know my surroundings. So I put in a GPS, like,
Mm-hmm.
nearest beauty supply store. It was raining
Right.
this day, but I had a Zoom call. And when I tell you it took me to the worst beauty supply you could ever think of, like, it was just
Yeah.
so bad. Like, it was
Mm-hmm.
raining outside, rain. I tell this to her all the time, raining outside, raining inside, like literally raindrops hitting the product, dozens of black women in there trying to get their things. And I'm kind of needing help because I don't know the store. Someone's near me, but they're just kind of
Mm-hmm.
covering to make sure I'm not stealing. I'm a full professional. I don't need to steal a
Right.
$1 rack telecom.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
Right.
they couldn't even communicate with me anyway what I was actually looking for and the help that I needed. So it was literally that day. I was like, no, this ends here. I'm gonna do something
Mhm.
about this today, and the rest is history.
I love it. I love it. I could definitely agree with you in that, like going to the beauty supply store and you always having to look at because they just be kind of walking by like, dude, what we
Mhm.
doing? Like, come on,
Mhm.
man. All
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
So I definitely thank you for creating a safe space,
Thank you.
for people of color, black women to go in there, because we already be feeling away like, dude, I need to get my hair done, I need these
Listen,
supplies.
because
And
when you in the
right,
beauty supply store, you already looking crazy. So you
right,
like, really?
right. Exactly. We don't need any more stress added. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Right. Absolutely. So thank you for that. So let's get into it. Let's talk about this money, right?
Yeah.
So can you walk us through the lending process? So first of all, how did you hear about River City and their products?
Yes. So I actually initially heard about River City through my nanny, which was crazy. So my
Okay.
nanny is also a business owner. She owns a nanny agency. So
Okay.
she's always been in the know on things. She always like, I was relatively new to this part of the game, but she's always
Mm-hmm.
just like known a lot, and she would share, things. And this was one that she shared, and she was like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you look into River City, but whenever you're, interested in
Mm-hmm.
lending options, I think you should look into River City. So I was like, okay, cool, cool, cool. Just kind of had it in the back of my mind. And,
Mm-hmm.
as I began to go to different like community events or,
Mm-hmm.
events for small businesses, I would see River City often, and then they would be
Mm-hmm.
presenting. And so I had the opportunity to, I think we lost, did we lose her? Okay, I'm just keep going. Hopefully she'll come back. So I had the opportunity to kind of meet Ron and also Luther and some of those folks. And,
Mm-hmm.
it was cool. It was like, all right, these are like really well versed, people. Like they had their own extensive,
Mm-hmm.
just experience
Yes.
in business, outside of business, economics, all these things. So got to know them a little bit more, and then from there it was like, okay, when I am ready, this is where I'm going.
Good. Love that. Yeah. I actually know Luther from the charter school space. I used to be a charter
Okay.
school admin when he was with, yeah, Tennessee Charter School Center. Good people all
Yes.
around. Yes. So we talked about how you heard about River City. So let's talk about the application process. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was very straightforward, I would say. So it was like I did a very short application at first. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I know this isn't it. But it was like enough information so that they could probably understand if I was even ready, to do this. And so someone actually reached out to me immediately and was like, hey, I got your application. We're looking. So it was a lot of communication, and then when they kind of looked at it, they were like, okay, it looks like you might be ready. Then there was a much fuller application that
Mm-hmm.
I did.
Right.
With that, I had to turn in, financials, P&Ls, taxes, business plan. What else? I
Mm-hmm.
think it was, obviously I had to have my registration and everything in
Yeah.
order. So like all the
Mm-hmm.
things you can think of that, a financial institution would ask for, including the business plan. They were very financial projections, even, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of those things were things that ultimately I ended up kind of turning into them.
Mhm.
And that was it. So I don't want to say that was it, but it was
Right.
definitely like, collecting a lot of the documents, pulling them together. I'd already had my business plan. So for me, it was just like updating it because we were in a space of scaling and
Mhm.
growing. So it's like, okay, well, let me add these components like the spa, like,
Mhm.
being online on Amazon, the digital things, like all of those things I did
Gotcha.
take the time to incorporate, but that was pretty much it.
Okay. And what about? I know you had mentioned like the financial reports, the profit and loss, the balance sheet, things like that. How challenging was it to get those numbers together?
It wasn't that bad because I already had a bookkeeper, right? So I think if I had not,
Yeah.
right, if I had not, it would have been a lot on me. And I went to business school, but I didn't do any, like, I haven't done it in 10, 15, 20 years, right? So
Mhm.
luckily, I've always had QuickBooks. So that has been helpful. I've always tried to be, at least cognizant of like looking at it every month
Mhm.
and, just logging things appropriately. And once I got the bookkeeper, that made things like even more so easy because we're talking every month, reconciling every month as well. So I mean, QuickBooks kind of did a lot of it because it was already in
Mhm.
there. So it was literally like a press of a button before I even had my bookkeeper. I was able to like get a sense of where we were before he kind of, went through and, just kind of just made sure everything looked appropriate. So yeah, it was not hard, but I will tell you, it's just by the grace of God that how you have this sense of, okay, I need to get myself together. I need to get my
Mhm.
affairs in order. And
Yeah.
so luckily I was already kind of there. And by the
Mhm.
time, I was in a position of asking, we were in a good place.
Good, good. So I would just want to let y'all know you heard it from Chastity that the numbers are important, right? Because one of the things that we talk about, Chastity, about bookkeeping, one of the benefits is that it protects, right, your time.
Yep. Yep.
And if you have a lender that's needing
Yep.
documentation, you talking about street cred, all you gotta do, like Chastity contacted her bookkeeper, the bookkeeper pulled the reports, and bam, right?
Yep.
It's the street cred because that lets the lender know that Chastity is legit,
Mhm.
right? And she's efficient.
Yeah. There's no what I mean, because as quick as it was happening, if I had to do that myself, I probably could have I would have been stressed out though. I would have been pulling
Mhm.
my hair, it just
Right.
would have been a lot for me to try to do. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. So I love that you mentioned it. And shout out to QuickBooks. So guys, you gotta have some level of accounting software,
Yep.
right? Because if you don't have accounting software, you're not maximizing your
Mhm.
money. You don't have the data needed to push your business forward, right? So I just want to emphasize those key points. So I told y'all, like, about telling y'all stuff,
Yep.
like it's for real. It's for real.
And it's
Right.
funny because, we're only 3 years old. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're kind of young, you're like, oh, I don't need to do this right now, or I got time, and
Mm-hmm.
that time sneaks up on you,
It
and
does.
especially when like, let's just say I had waited till I'm in my second or third year, then somebody
Mhm.
still got to go back, you know. So
Right.
it just pays to kind of go ahead and get it done because you're gonna pay either on the front end or the back end, but you're gonna end up paying when you really need this stuff, and it
Exactly.
is hell. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, but it is horrible trying to then go back a year or two or whatever, and
Mhm.
trying to like, oh, well, what was that for? I don't know. When someone's trying to like get you current, so yes, I would say that having that bookkeeper is essential, and if I had to do it all over again, I would have had it day one.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I love to hear it. Love that good feedback. All right.
Mhm.
So we talked about the application process. We talked about the documents. So let's talk about the timeline from the time you submitted the application
Mhm.
to the approval. So how long was that?
So it was about 2 months for me, but it was only because there was like a transition and an internal transition that was
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah.
But I Honestly, it probably would have been much quicker. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it probably could have been as quick because once everything kind of got in and, people were back into place,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it was fast. I think I had a conversation. They're like, oh, okay, we got all these documents. I think there was another conversation
Mm-hmm.
about, okay, asking just different questions about things.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably within the next week or so, we were approved. So it
Yeah.
was a very transparent, seamless process, a lot of communication. There was no kind of, sometimes it seems like this is a black box. You don't really know, like,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you've ever gotten a mortgage, they're asking you for all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff, all this stuff, all this stuff. It seems like it never ends. But it was like, no, these are the things we need. Okay. These are the questions we have.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the decision.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very straightforward. And I'm very appreciative of that, especially going through other underwriting situations where it seems like it just goes and goes and goes and goes. So yeah.
Love it, love it, love it. And once you get that approval, like, how did it feel? Talk about that.
I was ecstatic. I was like, oh my God. And let me tell you something too. And this is just a testament to how great RCC is because I went in asking for a certain amount.
Mm-hmm.
And so after we started talking, and then we were like, okay, well, that debt service is going to look like this. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Hold on now.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course, you're like, this is what I need, but you also have to factor in what your cash flow is going to be, how you're
That's
going to be able
right.
to pay that bill, and, as you're growing, being able to still be comfortable operating, paying business
Mm-hmm.
bill, all of these things. And
Right.
so I'm very grateful for Ron because he literally sat down with me and was like, all right, so if you do this and this is what it's going to look like, how do you feel about that? Are you comfortable with that? Like we
Mm-hmm.
had real conversations. And
Good.
so I was like, well, let me, hold on, let me just do my no, I'm not. So I actually like scaled it back
Okay.
after we had those conversations. And I'm just so grateful that he took that time because I feel like a lot of lenders are like, all right, cool. If you qualify for it, we're gonna give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want. And having that additional guidance, and just like him thinking like, all right, let me just at least have this conversation with her, like taking that time, like you
Mm-hmm.
don't really get that. And that's why I feel like there's so much value in CDFIs, in institutions like River City, because if I had just did this with Bank of America or whomever,
Mm-hmm.
that conversation probably would never have happened, and I probably would have been like, oh God, like I got
Mm-hmm.
this money, but
Mm-hmm.
this debt service is crazy.
Yeah.
So it really helped me to understand what I really needed
Mm-hmm.
to get, and then what I was going to be able to comfortably afford to pay back.
Love it, love it, love it. So yeah, just being able to sit down with Ron and go through the numbers, right? Because
Hmm.
there is a level, of risk that's involved.
Yep.
But Chastity mentioned something that was very important about cash flow, y'all. So we mentioned that too. Like once you go through your P&L, the goal is to, pay your, debt services off with your profit. So the
Hmm.
goal is to have more revenue than expenses, right? And then from there, whatever profit that you have, then you should be able to figure out what you're able to handle debt
Hmm.
wise, right?
Absolutely. And obviously I had done projections, but being a new business, I wanted to still be conservative because this
Mm-hmm.
is like these are still projections. You don't know what's gonna happen. Like you just never know. So I was like, I would rather be in a position where, I can still comfortably afford to pay this back versus me being super, super like, I can do this. I'm gonna make $1 million, day one, and maybe that happens, but then maybe that doesn't, and then where does that
Mm-hmm.
get you? So I'm grateful that I had that opportunity to really talk through that, think through that, look through like realistically, after scaling, after incorporating this, like, what did I
Mm-hmm.
realistically, even conservatively, right,
Right.
think that I was going to be able to do, so that
Mm-hmm.
I could make sure that I was in a comfortable position all the way around.
Gotcha, gotcha. So speaking of forecast, so once you got the funding, what can you walk us through kind of the strategy for repaying the loan?
Yeah. So we first of all, we always had like a little bit of a little nest egg, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Good.
that there's that. But number two, it was like, okay, we gotta
Mm-hmm.
start making this money. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I wasn't one that was like, all right, I'm gonna just let this money sit in the account. I had already known what I was gonna do with that money day one.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as that money dropped, I was like, all right, this is going to this. I need to do
Mm-hmm.
this. I need to do this because that money has to start working for me immediately so that I can
Right.
be able to, comfortably pay this
Mm-hmm.
bill. Right.
Right.
So it was more so like, all right, I got it in my mind. I'm like, all right, I got about 30-ish days to
Mm-hmm.
be able to kind of make something crack. Now, I did have a little bit of reserve, right? So it was like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, if it takes 60 days, we're still going to be fine. But I was very adamant that day one,
Mm-hmm.
I had to get things going and I'd already had a budget. And obviously, that was something that they had requested anyway, right? So
Yep.
it was
Mm-hmm.
really just like, all right, I got this plan. Let me let the plan work. And,
Mm-hmm.
let's see, how this money comes through. And luckily, I also was very adamant about there were things I knew that would take longer to
Mm-hmm.
kind of pay off versus things that I knew that were really quick wins. And so those
Yeah.
quick wins were the things that I invested in very quickly so that I could see those returns and I could see that cash flow to kind of get me to where we were or where we were able to be comfortable, getting that out. And so I will also say we also at that point had enough,
Mm-hmm.
so even outside of that nest egg, we had it anyway, in
Yeah.
our extra, to be
Mm-hmm.
able to afford it. But I didn't even want that to be the case. I wanted what I was paying was going to be from the overage, like from
Right.
investment. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how I always thought about it. So I didn't want to be in a place of subtracting from our existing profit. I wanted to be in a
Mm-hmm.
place of, all right, we're going to be over and beyond, where we
Mm-hmm.
were prior, and we're going to be paying for that with this new profit that we're bringing
Good, absolutely. So she brought up another word, y'all, the B word, budget.
in. Yeah.
You got to budget. You got to be
Yeah.
able to track what you're currently doing, and then based off of that data, the forecasting, being able to say, based off of this performance that we got going on right now, this is what we can kind of look at. And the strategy of being conservative is always wise.
Yep. 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 For
Always
sure.
wise.
For
Mhm.
sure.
Absolutely. So, Chastity, so going through that experience, the next question is, if you can see my shirt, it says, know your
Know
numbers,
your numbers.
right? So, how important
Oh
is
God.
it to know your numbers, especially when it comes to accessing funding?
Oh my God. Critical. Because I'll tell you, obviously, right? I
Mm-hmm.
got the spreadsheets and the projections and all this kind of stuff. So I can like look at the stuff. But I
Right.
remember one day, Ron called me and I was driving, but I
Mm-hmm.
had to pick up the phone, right? So we're having a legitimate conversation about all of this stuff, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I can't like pull over at this time because I'm also trying to get somewhere. I can't like look at like what I've sent him. Like I literally had to go off of what I knew. And if I did not
Mm-hmm.
know my numbers well, that conversation wouldn't have went well. And I don't know if I would have even gotten along, right? Because it
Mm-hmm.
was like some things that he was just asking me and kind of throwing out there. And I don't even think that that was his intent. But
Right.
if I would have been shaky or not confident in how I was responding and,
Mm-hmm.
just able to really give very solid,
Mm-hmm.
responses, I don't, that could have just deterred him
Yes.
in River City from wanting
Mm-hmm.
to do this. So
Right.
it's so important. And, I'm a girl that I'm like, oh, I got it all in my head. But honey, you also
Yeah.
got to have it on paper and you got to be
Mm-hmm.
able to see it and you really got to just know what it is because at any given moment, first of all, I am looking at my accounts every single day. But if
Mhm.
something, like if I'm looking and like something either is my account is a lot lower or a lot higher, it's like, oh wait, well, what's happened? If you don't, if you're not familiar with the cadence and what's going on, then you might
Mhm.
not catch some of that stuff. And then you
Right.
might be in a bad position. And it's not good to catch something, especially as a young business. You might not have the capacity to catch it 90 days later. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
especially as, again, a new business, you need that cash flow. You need to have all those things working in sync. So knowing your numbers is absolutely critical, but not just knowing them, having them readily available.
Mhm.
And being able to speak to those numbers, right? Like,
Right.
to your, it really is knowing it. It's not just having them. It's not like even just having your bookkeeper, be able to, like, you need to know the numbers, and you need to be able to speak to them, and you need to know how you need to adjust if anything happens. And you can
Right.
only know that if you actually know what's happening, how you're bringing in money, what's going
Mhm.
out. If, like,
Right.
again, this new bill, all right, I got to also cut some expenses. I know my expenses are looking like this, but I got this cable bill, and maybe I
Mhm.
can get a new provider. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
or maybe I had a bad month, which actually happened. Our HVAC
Mhm.
went out.
Oh no.
We were like literally closed for almost 3 months because the
Oh.
HVAC went out. The parts, of course, it's a commercial unit. The parts were on back order.
Mhm.
It's the summertime.
Mhm.
So you can't
Wow.
operate in Memphis. And so for a lot of
Right.
people, especially in retail, that would have killed them. Like,
Mhm.
3 months, and you have all these expenses and you're not able to really bring anything in.
Mhm.
But for me, it was like knowing, all right, these are the expenses that I have. These are the ways that I can kind of move this money here or there, or
Mhm.
toggle here or there. Or, all right, my digital business is doing this, but we're gonna have to do some, we're gonna have to
Right.
invest a little bit more here, because if not, we're not gonna be able to make it. So
Mhm.
I can't. I feel like I always heard this before. I was like, oh, whatever, whatever. But it's not until you go through the things, you try to get the funding, you're in these
Mhm.
positions where you see, or even if you want an investor, right? Like,
Right.
you just gotta be
Right.
in a position. You will not become a strong business until you're really grounded in those numbers.
I
Because if
love
it
it.
don't make dollars, it don't make sense.
If it don't, right. It don't make sense, right? And so the takeaways that I heard from your response is, one, if you have funding, it's easier for you to make decisions to pivot, right? So just imagine if your business, was not accessible,
Oh my God.
for 3 months. Luckily, you had additional,
That's true.
revenue sources, right?
Yep.
I
Yep.
got you had to think about inventory, like
Yep.
in hot Memphis heat.
Yes. Can you imagine? Yes.
Man,
Yes.
I'm like, wow.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's why it's so important. That's what funding can do for you, right? It gives you the power to make decisions. And even another thing that Chassie had mentioned too was about, the importance of having, bookkeepers and, on your team. Even with Ron, having his level of expertise to be able to help her kind of tell the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
the story of the numbers rather, right?
Mm-hmm.
To strengthen, her chances of getting that loan
Mm-hmm.
approved,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So it's not
Absolutely.
just, throwing numbers on a spreadsheet. You got to be
No.
able to justify. Like she said, she checks her numbers every day,
Every day. Every
every
day.
day.
Every day. Yeah, and me and my husband, we're a team. So it's like,
Mhm.
I still treat it very much like I was in corporate, and we try to, report the finances and report what's going on. And so, I mean, if he's asking me as my number one investor, if he's asking
Mhm.
me what's going on, I need to be able to say, oh, okay, it's this or whatever.
Mhm.
And if you don't know and you're guessing, that just, one, it makes the whoever you might be in business with just like not confident. But two, again, it just makes things so much harder when you have to make
Mhm.
instant decisions.
Wonderful. Yep, absolutely. You definitely, especially if you are married, you definitely have to make sure that you bring your spouse in, right?
Mm,
Because they are investing in some way, shape, or form with
yeah,
time, resources, what
yeah,
have you,
yep,
right? So you
yep.
got to keep them involved. So, Chastity, this has been such a treat. I really appreciate you taking the time to, come and talk to us and sharing your experience with us. So please let the audience know how they can get in touch with
Yeah.
you at the store and digitally.
Okay. And before I even do that, I just want to say a big, big thank you and shout out to River City again because, and you asked me this, but I want to just elaborate that being funded and knowing that your vision is actually fundable, it makes
Mhm.
you feel seen, it makes you feel
Yeah.
validated, and it just kind of puts everything you've been doing, it gives you that validity. And not that you
Mhm.
got to get validation from anywhere, but especially when you are a young business, like
Yeah.
knowing that this thing, somebody else thinks this thing don't work,
Mhm.
means everything. And again,
Absolutely.
because I was a young business, it would have been extremely hard for me to get funding anywhere else. A
Mhm.
lot of people that don't look like us don't
Right.
understand the business model and why it's even important to the community. So just want to say again, big shout out to Ron and River City and all the CDFIs that allow people's dreams to come true. So I would be remiss to not say that. And Sonia, thank you
Absolutely.
so much for just doing what you do because honestly, a lot of people have, they say that people perish from a lack of knowledge, and you are given free game on a consistent basis when it comes to something that a lot of us didn't grow up knowing, right? So we're
Mhm.
just trying to figure it out. And this platform, what you do, how real you are, how relatable, but how much you really know your stuff is just, I mean, it is a godsend. So I remember seeing you way before, like you didn't even know I existed, and I saw you. So it means
Oh.
the world to me. I actually did. Oh my God. Village United. I don't know if.
Her pro bono. You sure was
Yes,
her pro bono. That's right. You
I did
sure
her
was.
pro
Yeah.
bono. Now I wasn't
Mhm.
in your cohort, but I knew about you from her pro
Mhm.
bono. So I
Mhm.
knew about you a long time ago and have
Yeah.
been a fan for quite some time. And again, very appreciative of all that you've done and even the fact that you've allowed me on this platform to share is just phenomenal. So thank you.
Oh,
Okay, so I did
thank
all that. I'm
you.
sorry.
I appreciate this so much. I
Yes,
really
you are
do.
so well respected. Everybody like they were her promoter and they were like, "Oh my God, Sonya is the best." Like when I tell you, they were like, "Oh my God, you from Memphis?" Oh well, then you need to like everybody talked about you. That was like in your cohort. So just kudos to you for all that you've done, all the people that you've helped, and again, your reputation precedes you. So
Oh,
there's that.
thank you
But
so much.
you can find us. We are actually located in Midtown Memphis. We are at 152 North Avalon. So if you know
Okay.
Midtown, we're in the shopping center where Home Depot is, right next to
Okay.
Planet Fitness. We do have spa services. So we have facials, we have waxing. We also have our own hair care line. It is on Amazon as well. It's 8 products. The Edge Control is our best seller in the entire store. It's bomb. I'm telling you, you'll never try another one if you try this one.
Mhm.
And outside of that, again, we're on pinknoir.com, pinknoire.com, and across pretty much all social media outlets and platforms, pink, PINK__NOIRE.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you guys heard it here first. So thank you again, Chastity, and y'all. Just to let you know, the From Chaos to Clarity Unleash Your Business Potential podcast. We're trying something new. So every kind of doing Thursday podcast, and then the following Thursday we're doing a live Q&A. So I appreciate y'all coming out. and participating. We'll definitely be, sending out for my folks on the email list. So if you have not joined the email list, make sure you do that. So you'll also get access to the replay and all that good stuff as well. So we are going to end it here. And so, Chastity, we're going to debrief after
Okay.
this session. So y'all have a great evening, and we will see you this coming up Thursday on the podcast. Y'all take care.
Bye.
Bye.